Yo, what's going on? It's your boy C. And since my last episode, since the first episode of Nowthatscertificial, I've been um I've been asked to get a little bit more in depth about my upbringing. So here I am. I'm gonna give you a video, and I'm gonna get a little bit more in depth about my upbringing. My stepdad, rest in peace. He just passed away this last December. So when I speak of my dad, I'm speaking of him because I called him dad when in his presence, and I'll continue to do so in his absence. Excuse me. Um. So yeah, we're gonna start there. I think I had a pretty normal childhood. Uh, when my mom married my dad, she had already had 3 kids. Me being the youngest. Um, I have an older brother and an older sister, which are 7 and 8 years my senior. Um, my parents went on to have 3 kids of their own, and I had a pretty typical upbringing. We always had the things we needed. Always food on the table. Always had a roof over our head and a clean home. Clothes on our back. And I always say that I had a good childhood because I don't want to take away from the efforts that I know that my parents made, you know, to give us those things. So I always say that I had a good childhood, which I did. And um I don't think, well, things for me didn't start getting real until um you know preteens, early teenage years. My older siblings were forced out the house at 17, 18 years old, which has left me being the oldest child still left at home. And I guess when you start to come into yourself, especially being a young man, you start feeling yourself and kind of being rebellious. And I seen the fights between um, my parents and my older siblings, and I looked up to my brother and my sister. So it it gave me a reason to rebel, just because. And um, not having, you know, some of the nice shit that the other kids had, it forced me to it forced me out in the street. But um, I got my first job at 15. Um, and I always tried to do the right thing, even when I was doing the wrong thing. But at that age, you just trying to find yourself. So a lot of times I found myself in trouble. coming up, and my brother was never around. He was always incarcerated, in and out of jail. My sister played a big role in my life. She was like a second mom, definitely a role model, a big sister to the core, you know what I mean? And my godmom played a big role in my life as well. Rest in peace, Nancy Williams. She played a very big role in my life. And I miss her dearly. Not having, I never had a OG or a old head or nobody to really tell me the do's and don'ts in the game. So me and my guys, we kind of raised each other, you know what I mean? And God bless, we still here, you know what I mean? Not as close as we used to be, but we all grown and got families of our own now. But back to the story. By the time I was 16, I was in an adult institution. Facing a lot of time at the time. I end up with no money. I had a public defender. I ended up getting a suspended sentence and serving 8 months. I still remember the day I came home. My mom, my godmom came to pick me up. My godbrother, they came to get me. I was released from Brockbridge, and I can still remember that day. But that was just the beginning of a cycle. I was back incarcerated probably 6 months later, where I sat for another 5-6 months until I made bail. And during that time, I had a son. My son was born, and I'm going back and forth to court. I had been out of my parents' house at this time for about a year or so at this time. And mind you, I'm just turning 18, and I have been gone. I have been out of my parents' house for like a year, and I resented my parents for that, for throwing me out into the world without the tools I needed to be successful in this world. And as a man, I take some of that responsibility because I wanted to be a man. And when you're in a man's house, sometimes it's only room for one man. You know what I'm saying? Especially when you're not contributing to the household. So I understand. So by the time my son was 11 months, I was on my way to prison. 7-year sentence, and I did 4 years and 9 months on that 7 years. I came home to a 5-year-old son who I missed so much valuable time in his life that it took a toll on our relationship. His mom was bringing him to see me when she could, and I appreciated that. A year later, my oldest daughter was born, and I went on to have 2 more girls after her. Coming home, I wanted to be on the right path. I didn't want to go back to prison. So, I tried working. Trying to hold on to a job whenever I could. Wasn't really good with the relationship thing. I had I would say abandonment issues. When you feel like the woman that gave you birth, the one that brought you in this world, don't really give a fuck about you. It's hard for you to trust any woman. And that was my life story for a few years. Me and my mom were good though. It was a lot of things I had to learn, and it was a lot, some things I had to get off my chest, or some conversations that had to be had, and a lot of reflection. I had to look in the mirror and take responsibility for my actions. And I bounced from job to job, trying to stay out of the streets, and unsuccessfully I went back to the streets and did what I felt like at the time was the only thing I knew, which is nonsense. Because, I've always been a lot sharper than I've given myself credit for. So, I jumped into the music and was doing the music, putting all of my pain and my emotions in my music, and I enjoyed that for a few years while still running around in the streets. And then eventually I just, lost my passion for that. And I started my clothing line, Certificial Clothing Company. And I've been doing that for the past few years. with a few other ventures and investments I have on the table. Now we're here, and this is just a certificial conversation with C. You know what I mean? And just stay tuned. We'll be dropping an episode 2 will be dropping Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern. Now that's Certificial. Tune in. And you can follow me on Instagram at IM_Certificial. Holla at your boy. Peace.